Hi there, and welcome to my chat about calorie deficit. It is a topic that I'm often asked about. Why do you not recommend calorie counting in your programs? And it's sometimes also a discussion I have with people who kind of are really advocates of the calorie or creating calorie deficit as the only way to lose weight. So I just have a few thoughts on that. And the first one obviously is that I absolutely, there's no discussions about it. Obviously, if you constantly are feeding more into your body than you are using, it has to go somewhere and it has to go into fat storage, which is kind of, that is just the way it is. But something that is often forgotten is the way that this is actually how our bodies are designed. So going back to caveman times when we developed as humans, that's what we needed to survive. So when there was food there, when food was available, we needed to eat. And when there was a food shortage, we released it. So do you remember lockdown, beginning of lockdown, we all ate more than we'd normally eat, and we all shopped more. We brought out, everything. We were prepared for famine. That was our subconscious mind telling us to store. And it is so prevalent. Like it's so normal to do that. And that's how our bodies are designed. So to just reduce it to simply calorie in, calorie out in our bodies is very easy way to understand, but our bodies are much more complex. So the three questions that I want to ask when it comes to calorie counting and so on is, why do we actually overeat in the first place on calories? Secondly, how does a calorie deficit actually affect your metabolism? And third, what do the calories actually do in your body? So the first question, why do we tend to overeat? Again, our bodies are so clever. We actually have a hormone called leptin, which should tell us when we're full. But for some reason, that hormone isn't working. Well, it's not working with today's food, with the food that are around today. So the other question then as well is, why do our bodies not realize that there is a big fat reserve there? So it's a bit like, you have a freezer full of food and you still run to the shops every single day, putting in new stuff. And even though there is food there is food available. So the answer to that question is simply that the foods that we have around nowadays are so different to when caveman was around. High in sugar, highly processed, carbohydrates that are released very quickly. And quite often it has additives that make us addictive. So the other thing is also, when we were caveman, sugar was so rare that when we actually found it, we got that dopamine hit, that happy hormone that makes us feel great, because we were supposed to eat more. Look, we found a berry, really, really sweet, really great, nutritious, giving us lots of energy. Eat more, eat more, eat more. So that happy hormone dopamine is still lit when you're actually when you come across sugar. The only problem is, if you eat a lot of it, constantly eating sugar, you need more and more and more to get that fix. And that's why, for example, I would always recommend going sugar-free for a while, because that resets that whole, craving process. So the other thing, again, about overeating, when we only look at calories in, calories out, you hear quite often, oh, but I went for a long walk, or you've just been to the really tough gym session, you're exhausted and you're hungry anyway, but you justify it yourself with having that extra bit of food because, you deserved it. And that's another bit of a flaw. So, so to summarize that, the foods nowadays are easily to overeat. I mean, I've rarely heard anybody overeating on broccoli. So that is just something to keep in mind. Now, the second question is, what's happening to our metabolism? And, when you're only creating a deficit in energy, what your body does, first of all, it goes to your muscle. And what happens then if you have less muscle, your metabolism, your overall metabolism slows down. And then when you start eating normally again, you have a slower, so the foods that you are eating, that you need to eat to just stay alive, that metabolism has slowed down. So you need less, but if you're still eating the same as before you went on a diet, you're just gaining weight. And that's the typical yo-yo diet effect. So because of that, I highly recommend anybody who does go on calorie deficit diets to make sure they have plenty of protein in the diet, because if protein is available through food, your body doesn't need to go through the muscle, but also to do exercise to show your body that it needs those muscles, that it can't expend them, that they are needed. And that's only when that happens, then your body does look at the other reserves, at the fat reserves. So I'm a total fan, don't get me wrong, total fan of exercising, but not to use of calories, but rather for your mood, for muscle building, for bone building, and also just simply when you're in great form and when you do exercise, you're less likely to overeat. And the other thing though, when it comes to exercise, where I would be careful with is stress. So if it causes you stress because, oh yeah, I've gained weight again, I need to exercise, or I need to do more and more and more. A lot of people run to the gym like crazy and overtrain. And the fact of going to the gym causes more stress on top of everything else that is going on. And, again, that whole cravings that come with the stress is it's just totally detrimental. And the other thing, and that is something I see a lot in women, especially after the menopause or during the menopause, is they eat hardly anything. And they, when I see them the first time and they show me the food diary, which I always look at, and there's hardly anything in, so few calories. And they say, yeah, but I'm really, that's it. I'm honest. I'm not sneaking in the calories somewhere. And I believe them. But what I sometimes hear, if I discuss that whole calorie deficit idea with others, sometimes people actually say to me, actually, your clients just don't tell you the truth. They're probably sneaking in the donuts somewhere. And no, I know, I mean, I'm not the only one, my fellow nutritional therapists have the same thing. And see that over and over again, and especially in women as we grow older. And here's the clue, here's the answer. So if you are constantly starving yourself, your body actually also brings down the metabolism. And it made totally sense in caveman time. If you have a slow metabolism and you don't require as much food to survive, it's of an advantage. So in famine time, it makes sense to slow down the metabolism. Somebody who's hyper and running around like crazy all the time is not a good idea when you're in a famine. So most of the times the body slows down through the thyroid. And so an underactive thyroid, and this is something so common, and it's also something so often undiagnosed. So first of all, by the time people actually even think of going to the doctor, when they have low energy and when the weight is gaining, because they constantly blame themselves, they think, oh, I might have to be stricter or whatever. So by the time somebody actually goes to a GP, and then it can take a long time. So thyroid issues are not diagnosed because a GP does only one specific test. But again, thyroid is very, very complex. And as nutritional therapists, we're trained to do specific tests and interpret those, which we can address then with specific nutrients, and also, possibly with thyroid hormones. I mean, that's then obviously a question for your GP. But it can take sometimes years before that underactive thyroid is even diagnosed. And during that time, those women, and it is mainly women, running to the gym or eating hardly anything or beating themselves up and causing a lot of stress, which is even more detrimental to the thyroid and overall health. So I always say to my clients, eat until you're full. And, obviously not sugary foods, but eat really good quality food. If you have a good source of protein, lots of vegetables, lots of fiber to keep you full for a long time, that is giving your body the sense of security, that the body feels safe. Yeah, I have plenty of food, and maybe only snack if there's a longer period between your lunch and your dinner, for example. But otherwise, just stick to the main meals. That is absolutely sufficient and gives your body a break as well. So I think this is really a key thing. So if, and it doesn't matter how much, the calories don't matter. Your body needs to feel safe. And that's the important thing. So the third question, and that is also so important to do, what does a calorie actually do in your body? And the three things you have to consider there are the nutrients, it's your gut health, and it is insulin. So, like just looking at fueling it, as just sticking things in is not enough to have a fully healthy body. So whatever you feed yourself, look at the nutrient content. Recently I heard one of those trendy places that is really popular at the moment and is advocating calorie restriction, calorie in, calorie out. They recommend substituting fish like salmon, because it's an oily fish, with white fish because it has less calories. And it just doesn't take anything into consideration that especially our brains need the essential fatty acids and need good quality of those fats, because our brain is mainly fat. And so, and the same with nuts and seeds. Yes, they are high in calorie, and that's not the point. But the point is also, what does it do? So low-fat products quite often leave you hungry again soon after. But if you have, like, for example, nuts, you might have more calories, but they keep you fuller for longer, and you don't need to eat it. And the whole fear about cholesterol is another completely different topic. But our brains are made of cholesterol, and they need the good fats to function properly. So this is my big thing. I'm really interested in the brain health and maybe the long-term consequences of eating low fat for years, maybe. And this is something that's often not considered. So, the other thing is, the vitamins, the nutrients, the minerals, everything in your body is made out of building blocks. And in order to get the building blocks right, whether it's your hormones, your neurotransmitters, those things that are firing in your brain, every muscle, everything in your body, every single function needs nutrients. And the only way to get it is from your food. So why eat empty calories? Why eat anything? Why put anything into your body that isn't fueling it? And the only way I could think of, for example, is if water isn't bad for you, or olive oil, but if you pour that into your car, into your petrol tank, it's no use. So, why do that to your body? Why not just everything you put in should have a function? And yeah, so the other thing is then sugary foods, for example, they actually they actually rob you of certain vitamins, and they're not just not giving you anything, they're actually robbing some of the good nutrients. So I would say there is no neutral food. Food is either fueling you, is either good for your health, or it's bad for your health. The next thing then is the gut health. The connection between your gut and your brain is huge. So in the same way as your brain needs brain food, really good, healthy fats, your gut and the communication with your brain has also an effect on your mood and your motivation. So that is actually the main point that I'm trying to make. So if you're only eating low-fat products and not getting enough of the nutrients, and if you're not really looking after your gut health, what effect has that on your overall motivation to stick to a diet, to feel great while you are on a diet? And I would actually say that that is one reason why it is so difficult, or why for many people they perceive it as being difficult. So back to our gut, you know, so it's not only 70% of our immune system is actually in our gut. So even if you don't want to do it for anything else, for the crazy times we're in, and that we need good, strong immune systems, it's important. But there's so much information coming out of the connection between certain good bacteria and how you feel. If you just look at calories, it doesn't tell you anything if the food actually might be detrimental to the good bacteria. For example, artificial sweeteners are really, really bad. They're destroying some of your good bacteria. It also doesn't show you, you know, sort of sugary foods, for example. And good for your bacteria are vegetables and high fiber food. So what those bacteria do in your body also, not only have they the direct connection to your brain, but they also produce energy with the short chain fatty acids. Also, you could have, for example, an overgrowth in candida, which is a yeast growth. And these bacteria could be the driver for your sugar cravings. So, you know, they are very powerful, and you just don't know, you have no power over them, or, you know, you struggle quite a lot. Again, it is something as a nutritional therapist we can do. We do stool tests where we analyze it, we can interpret them, and we can, you know, kind of, if you have, for example, candida, there's natural ways of getting rid of it. And yeah, just feeding the good bacteria. And now the third thing, the most important thing about what foods do in your body, and what I really want to put emphasis on is, and I tell that every client, is balancing your blood sugar. Because this is probably one of the most important things you can do. An unbalanced blood sugar causes a lot of stress and adds to your already stressed body. It causes energy slumps, decrease in energy. It could cause even anxiety, and ultimately it could lead to insulin resistance and diabetes. It also probably plays a role in heart disease in the long term, certainly on Alzheimer's and dementia. So what causes an unbalanced blood sugar? Basically, it's eating and overeating on sugars and carbohydrates, especially the fast-releasing carbohydrates. So you need to remember, every single carbohydrate is turned into glucose, broken down, goes in the bloodstream where the body doesn't like it. And in order to get it out of blood into the cells where it's needed, you need insulin. But the other function, and I said it earlier at the top, the other function, we have more functions in our body to store fat. So one of the functions of insulin is to store fat. So again, because when sugar was available, you wanted to keep it. And so insulin is a fat storing hormone. And, you know, you don't have to have a terribly hot diet. So if you have your cereal for breakfast, if you have maybe a vegetable soup and a sandwich for lunch, and your dinner has mashed potatoes or spaghetti or something, and maybe some fruit in between as a snack, you constantly need insulin. Now, fat and protein don't require insulin. So if you combine protein and carbohydrates, it can, you know, slow down the high release. So the problem, what happens as well, is if you put in a lot of sugar into your bloodstream quickly, it needs a lot of insulin. And then it can crash because it kind of overshoots the target, cleans it up too quickly, and then you have a low blood sugar. And the low blood sugar is stress for your body because it wants to have a certain level of sugar in the blood. So it creates extra stress hormone, and cortisol, the stress hormone, what does it do? It releases more sugar from the reserves into the bloodstream, which in turn requires more insulin. So not only will it make you feel kind of anxious and jittery and stressed, it also raises your blood sugar. And that whole cycle, you know, up and down all day long, is also the constant insulin is causing inflammation, but it's also especially you know, around the middle. That's where you can see if people store the fat around the middle, quite often it's the first sign of insulin resistance, which comes long before your body would register a high blood sugar, because there's insulin there, you know, so it's taking it out of the blood, but it's causing a lot of inflammation and stress, you know. So the other issue, and that's again, women during and after menopause become more sensitive to insulin. So they're more prone to actually store the fat around the middle and have more difficulties of losing it. So one thing that I really recommend, and I know it's when you're talking about fasting and the same content of creating an energy deficit, fasting has a completely different effect on your body, on your metabolism. And so the combination of reducing calories to a certain degree and fasting is much better than grazing throughout the day little portions and leaving your body that sense of it being a famine, because every time it eats, there's only very little available. Whereas if you're fasting, you would eat a proper meal. I mean, depending what type of fast you do, but if you do it on a day-to-day basis, you would eat a proper meal that fills you up, that keeps you full, gives your body that sense of safety and security. But while you're fasting, your metabolism shifts into fat burning mode. And that is the key. It actually taps into the reserves, and loads of other things like repairing your body happen in that time when you're fasting. So it's a different shift. It's a different, you know, way your body works. It also doesn't affect, you know, losing muscle. So it's completely different. So it is something I would highly recommend. So, you know, that's where my problem comes with just focusing on creating an energy deficit. Now, I know that people who recommend that also say, you know, eat more vegetables and eat less sugar, but the difference is really the focus. I just believe that focusing only on calories in, calories out leaves a lot of people just stuck in that being on or off a diet, rather than making long-term changes. It can cause stress. It can cause, you know, your metabolism to slow down. It causes, as I just mentioned, all of those things that are just different from, you know, losing weight. So I think knowing also the connection between your nutrients and what you eat and feeling well and being motivated to stay on a diet is so vital, so much more vital, and giving your body the right nutrients so much more important than just focusing on calories. So I believe firmly that if you want to lose weight, you need to feel empowered, motivated, and you need to feel happy in yourself to have the drive to stick to it. And I think that is easier done when you focus on nutrients rather than calories. So I hope this has given you food for thought, and any questions, any comments, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to have more discussions about that. And yeah, looking forward to hearing your comments and opinions on that. So I'm just going to finish. Thank you.